This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hey, this is Jeff Russo. I'm the composer from Star Trek Discovery, and you're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to Postcards from the Edge. I am your host, Amy Nelson. And with me this week is the one and only Wes Huntington. Wes, thank you for coming on Postcards.
Oh, thanks, Amy. This is a dream come true for me.
Well, you have been an avid fan, wonderful commenter. We've read your comments on almost, I believe, every episode of Postcards. Your comments are always so insightful and wonderful, and so this is the first time that you have been here on Postcards. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your Star Trek story and how did you even find Star Trek?
Well, I've been a Star Trek fan pretty much all my life, actually. My parents are big Trekkies themselves. So I kind of grew up watching Star Trek. Mm-hmm. So, and since I'm on the autism spectrum, I kind of clung to those characters who are kind of the outsiders. Mm-hmm. Characters like Data or Spock, mm-hmm. for example. They're pretty much the ones who comment on the human condition, saying that, that's the way they comment. They observe humanity and they offer their own 2 cents. So. And with this, and when Enterprise got canceled when I was 14, so it was kind of sad, Then the Kelvin timeline came around. I loved them all except for Into Darkness. But I liked Beyond. I love Beyond. I love Beyond the most. Out of the three. But
and so when did you find Trek FM?
I would say probably like last November.
Okay.
Because since I have an Apple phone, I can look at podcasts and I'm going like, hey, I've heard of you guys before I actually started listening to you guys.
Wow.
I actually heard of you guys, but I never listened to any of them until last November when Discovery started airing, especially when Discovery started getting going and stuff like that. So I would say that, since November mm-hmm. of last year. And Discovery is actually the first show watching as an adult.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you love Star Trek so much that you started your own podcast. Yes?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And it's called the Minnesota Star Trek Nerd.
Yes.
And it's twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. And it's influenced by one of the network's shows, Earl Grey. So, the feedback you guys read on that show, it influenced me saying, hey, why don't I start a podcast of my own?
Yeah, great. And I know you really enjoy Mission Log as well, and they're very influential, and they're the cream of the crop right there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I John and Ken, they're the greatest podcasters I know.
Yes, agreed. Well, today we're just not going to talk about you, Wes. We are here to talk about the very first short Trek's Runaway. Now, listeners, if you would like to participate and share your response, please post your comments on the Babel Conference. That is our listeners group on Facebook. Type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field, and it will come right up. So, Wes, I'm sure you watched Runaway at least once. So.
Oh, yeah. I watched it 3 times in preparation for this episode.
Yes. And so tell us, what were your initial thoughts? Like after just your first watch, what surprised you? Were you disappointed?
I wasn't really disappointed in this. I said on a recent episode of my podcast that this was going to be the funniest one of the 4. Because I love Mary Wiseman. I think she's a great actress in the role of Sylvia Tilly. So I think she got most of the humor in season 1 of Discovery. So I would think this was the most funniest one because of that, especially with that scene in the mess hall when the crew comes in and going like, there's a hormonal space rabbit. He escaped from the lab. He's got mood swings.
Yeah.
When I watched that, I laughed out loud so hard. It was brilliant. I wasn't necessarily disappointed with the episode, and I liked the format. I like this format because if these will continue past these 4, we could potentially get shorts as we approach other things that they're working on for CBS All Access regarding Star Trek. So I think this format is very, very well could be something that would be great.
Yeah, it's so brand new and seems to be cutting edge, like tell a little story in the meantime. And yeah, I find it very interesting to see television, evolving this way.
Yeah, I like it. I like this way too, Amy. I like it this way too. And I'm glad that we're getting new Discovery material as we approach the season 2 premiere in January.
Yes. As was announced, right?
Yep, it was announced it would be January 17th.
That's right. So the Edge is coming back for sure.
Oh, yes, definitely.
All right. Well, let's get to what the fans had to say. And we're going to start with Matthew Baker. He says, I liked it. It was cute. A little tell of self-confidence. Nothing big, but it's a short trek. Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ricardo Tapia says, it just felt like Star Trek. That's never a bad thing. Now, I read this comment and I'm going like, this is, wow. I would agree totally 100% on this person.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely had a Star Trek feel to it. I mean, of course, the discovery and everything, but the idea, the theme of it was very Star Trek to me as well.
Yeah, because it had heart and it had humor, kind of like it mirrors like what they did for the original series, with the heart and the humor and stuff like that. So.
Maribel Myers says, watching Runaway was a little bit like being given an entree and having it taken away only after one bite. Please, sir, can I have some more? I was left with more questions about Sylvia Tilly than answers. Still looking forward to season 2, but I have a feeling each one of these short treks could have been its own standalone full-length episode. Agreed.
Yeah, agreed 100%. I have a feeling that these short treks are going to be followed up on in season 2 or beyond. So I think this is going to be a great idea. Justin Ozer said, I loved it. It really felt like a full Discovery episode, but in a shorter format. I think that the story was great and I loved Tilly in it. The alien species that was introduced was really fascinating, especially the concept of how their species was born and the relationship to their planet. Looking forward to the next 3.
Yeah, that was very interesting. The idea that she and the planet were born at the same time. I still don't know how that works, but it's an interesting concept.
Yes, and I was like, when what was her name now? Poe. When she said that, I'm going like, that's fascinating. I was like Tilly. I was going like, that's not possible. But
and then Poe's like, you don't know what's possible.
Yeah, you don't know what's possible. And I think that's really fascinating because it actually, if you really think about it, Amy, that's like something that is biblical in a sense.
Yes.
So.
I like it.
I saw a comment somewhere else that said something like that. So.
Mark Boder says, I enjoyed it for what it was. I knew it was going to be relatively low budget production with a minimal cast, so I wasn't expecting anything mind blowing. And I'm always happy to see Tilly. Keep your expectations in check, and I think you'll find these shorts entertaining.
Yes.
Well, Mark, I completely agree, and I did not keep my expectations in check. And so the first time I watched it, I was like, it felt like Tilly was on the ship alone. And I was like, where is everyone? I wanted to see everyone. But yeah, I needed to keep my expectations in check. And when I watched it, my second time and after, I was like, okay, this is a good episode. I wanted more, and so I think if we as fans can just sort of, pull back on the reins, it's great.
Yeah, Amy, I totally agree with you with that, because I didn't have any expectations going in. Like, granted, I thought this was going to be the funniest one, and it didn't disappoint. But if we pulled back on the reins, I think if we just lowered them, it'd be fine. So I agree. Chris Hill says, I really enjoyed it. It was a nice little story that played out with a little bit of Alana Troyes, a bit of Trouble with Tribbles, and Lower Decks. Very much Trek, if you ask me. I thought Tilly was great. This is just more evidence that she is mine and my girlfriend's temporary displaced sunshine child. Interesting comment.
Yeah, I love the mix of episodes that just sums it up perfectly. Alana Troyes, Trouble with Tribbles, and Lower Decks. That's exactly it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very that is the perfect mix right there. Because you got Tilly and the Lower Decks thing, you got Trouble with Tribbles with the humor, and then you got Alana Troyes with Poe. Definitely.
All right. We did have some very lengthy comments. And so we're going to read one, Nicholas Paul Collinson. We had quite a few others, and I apologize for not reading them all. This is just a very short Postcards episode. So I do apologize to the others who gave us very well thought out comments. So listeners, please go on to the Babel conference and read through. The comments were just wonderful. So Nicholas says, okay, managed to watch it. I'm watching this in low quality SD on Daily Motion. Thanks, CBS. So I might have missed some details, but it was still pretty fun. First off, just like with the second Mud episode, why don't they have better bioscans when they bring stuff onto the ship? It seems really easy to sneak on board the most advanced ship in Starfleet. Oh my God, Tilly's mom is the worst. Your daughter's in Starfleet, women. What more do you want? Least supportive mother ever. I know quite a few people who will empathize here. Even the food synthesizer is giving her grief for her caffeine. Janeway wouldn't stand for that. I love Tilly out-nerding Poe, and I really like that as she assumes that Poe is animalistic until she gets the translator working. It kind of illustrates the trope where we will assume a creature or alien is less intelligent if we can't communicate with them. It was subtle, but I really like this. Okay, I want to know how Zahians are the same age as their planet. There seemed to be a lot of hand-wavy stuff in this episode that wouldn't make sense if you dwell on it too much. But explaining it would slow down the story way too much. I like the overall environmental message. It was a bit unsubtle, but that's kind of what we need right now, and a short, lighthearted episode like this was a good vessel for that. I hope we see a continuation of the story later in the series, and I hope we, outside of North America, can watch the later short treks through legitimate channels eventually. So stoked for more disco. Well, thank you, Nicholas. You gave us a lot to talk about there. I thought the environmental message was spot on and agreed it was a little bunk on the head, but you're right. That's what we need right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, a part of this comment said, Tilly's mom is the worst. I thought of, when I saw that scene, I immediately thought of Waxana Troy.
Oh,
I did. I'm serious. Because after she got done talking to her mom,
yes,
she screamed in her pillow. It's just something probably Deanna probably did.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So I don't know if there'll be. Maybe Marina Sirtis will be Tilly's mom eventually, but we didn't get really see a good angle of Tilly's mom in the episode.
You're right. We didn't. And I noticed that too. I'm like, let's see this mother. We only saw, her backside and a hologram type of thing. So,
yeah. So I'm guessing they probably used her as like a placeholder. So maybe Marina Sirtis can be her mom. I don't know, but I would be totally on board for that if that ended up being true. But yeah, I can totally empathize with that because my father is kind of like a little overbearing, like Tilly's mom on occasion. Mm-hmm. So I totally sympathize with Tilly there. So
yeah, did you see on the Babel conference, the whole thread and like Chris Littlefield was, how do you tame something like Maria from The Sound of Music, but he put in Tilly. That was so cute. Listeners, go and read it. It's a great thread throughout.
Yeah, I did read that thread. And I'm with you there, Christopher. And so Patrick Carlin says, ill-advised that amount of caffeine is my best friend, so shush. Discovery's food synthesizers need to mind their own business. Yeah, I kind of wondered about that. Why does the computer on the Discovery have a sassy attitude?
Yes, and this was sort of a whole thread. Andrew Boot says, if the replicator said that to me first thing in the morning, I'd do more than side-eye it. And Janessa was like, if the replicator ever says, I honestly think you ought to sit down calmly and take a stress pill and think things over, I'd reprogram the entire main computer with great prejudice. Yeah, there was a little attitude that computer gave Tilly.
Yeah, I was kind of like, what? Maybe when Lorca was a part of the crew, maybe he reprogrammed the computer to be this sassy? I don't know. I heard that theory somewhere, and I'm going like, that's fascinating. Maybe he did. But I was a little turned off by that. Man, it was kind of like that computer that the Enterprise did in that episode of the original series that had recorded, dear.
Well, it sort of reminded me to call back like when Burnham and Tilly were ordering breakfast and, it was like, we'll get the roasted tomato salsa, not the, and just sort of keeping her on track on her diet plan, supposedly, And I just sort of thought that was cute and the interplay, it was a callback for me between Burnham and Tilly. So
yes, and I have never ever heard of a quadruple espresso either.
Yeah.
Because, that was what she ordered. So, and when I first saw a picture of this scene when they were promoting this, I thought it was something totally different. I had no idea it would be espresso. I thought it would have been something alcoholic. So, because it's just a short little cup.
Yeah.
So I thought it was something alcoholic.
Well, an espresso it is.
Andrea Boots says, please excuse the incoherence of this review. Translating fangirl squeals into normal English isn't easy. So I did see the episode this morning. It took a bit of digging to find it, but I managed to watch it. This episode basically confirms that Tilly is my favorite. Flaming hell, it's like they took my mom and gave it to Ensign Tilly. This now gives me a newfound respect for her, knowing what she more than likely grew up with. The caffeine and the replicator. I had to laugh at the sass over Tilly's espresso drink. And that side-eye to the replicator. If I had been told that, I had done the same thing too. I think Poe was a really good character, and she had a really great rapport with Tilly. Meeting a character from a completely different walk of life from a planet that isn't a member of Starfleet or the Federation brought something else to the story. Yeah. I was squealing a little bit.
Yes. And I like, Poe. and that, yeah, they're not a member of Federation, but yet still okay to interact because they had just got warp drive, right?
Yeah,
So,
they had just achieved warp drive.
yeah.
So
Tilly's like, I read up on that. It's like, of course you did, Tilly.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Ian Bartholomew says, I enjoyed that overall. The dialogue got a bit dodgy towards the end. I'm assuming king and queen are the universal translator's best approximation of local terms, as clunky as they were. But I did enjoy the quick developing relationship between the two women and the mutual respect they afforded one another. Yeah, and I think that is in part due to Tilly's endearingness that she has, that she's able to relate to Poe on this basic need to be understood. Because Tilly very quickly got to the real problem with Poe. And on the ship, I think Tilly is the best one to do that.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. And I was kind of surprised that they were able to do it so quickly. You know, maybe because they're similar in age. You know,
yeah.
the age between the two of them. Granted, it was like about 6 years, give or take. But I think probably because of the ages of the two characters, probably, you know, allowed them to coexist quickly.
Yeah.
Because if it had been anybody else, say for Saru or Burnham, for example, I don't think they would have listened to her very much. Tilly could, because she was about the same age as Poe.
Yeah. Well, and we see, you know, in season 1, like Tilly, you know, gets underneath and gets to like Stamets, you know, under his rough exterior. He, you know, she gets in and becomes friends and befriends, you know, Stamets so quickly, I think more than anyone else. Well, outside of Hugh, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. Nicholas Anastasio said, I thought the episode was pretty good. Not perfect, but more good than bad. I give it a solid B. I love the way Poe was portrayed in the first half of the episode. Love the creepy tension building and the way Mary Wiseman plays into those moments as Tilly. Very well shot, good use of music, classic Trek premise. It's the second half of the episode that hurts it. The dialogue is weak, the messages are too on the nose, and Poe goes from seemingly truly alien to acting like a suburban American teen in a blink of an eye. All traces of her previous mannerisms are completely gone. Overall, I do appreciate how this short form tries to return some of the old episodic storytelling of Trek to the world of Discovery. I look forward to the next ones. Interesting comment there.
Yeah, I can see the point about Poe turning. I don't know if I would have said a suburban American teen, but I
saw it.
Yeah. But yeah, her mannerisms definitely changed. But I think Poe was allowing herself to become vulnerable because she was now trusting Tilly and getting to the heart of, you know, why she was running away. She needed a moment to reflect and to figure out what in the heck she was going to do with herself, with her responsibility of becoming queen and the responsibility of her planet, and how she was going to, you know, enter her planet into this new world, you know, with her discovery and everything. So there definitely was a transformation, and I can sort of see why she needed to. I see her motives a little bit clearer at the last scenes there.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with Nicholas on this comment to an extent. Yeah, I saw the suburban American teen from Poe. I did. But, yeah, some of the episodic storytelling of Trek. Yeah, so I agree on that. So.
Yes. And since everyone knows I love Next Gen, I love episodic TV. So this one was just right up my alley.
Yeah. And speaking of season 2 news of Discovery, they announced that, you know, even though the whole story arc is about season 2, they're going to have some episodic feeling to it. So, so that's kind of nice.
Yes. Well, here on Postcards, we don't always read just the good things. We do read everything, including questions and complaints. And Brandon Cole says, I am sorry, but it was not all that good. I will watch it again tomorrow and see if I like it better. But for now, it wasn't all that special.
I disagree.
Okay.
But yeah, I disagree, but it is what it is. This is a long one from Brian Diggs. He says, as usual, so many good things and so many bad things. I was going to try for a chronological list, but there was a cameo by the Anasaurus. The opening music was strangely ominous for a Tilly episode. Mary Wiseman's acting was phenomenal, of course. First thing I thought when I saw her was, what could she have possibly screwed up as an ensign on the command track that has her so visibly upset? Mother Tilly was written brilliantly. Per usual, the plot was all about taming the savage alien and making them behave more like the civilized white European humans, even down to loving ice cream. I would have preferred to see her find ice cream disgusting, but loved the meatiness of the burrito. By the end, she barely exhibits any of her original cultural traits. On Star Trek, aliens are acceptable as long as they attempt to act white, like white European humans, which unfortunately was the lesson of the final episode of season 1. Burnham must accept abandoning Vulcan philosophy for the superiority of human philosophy, specifically white European human philosophy. Okay. That was heavy.
Yeah, definitely a critique on what is acceptable and in the Federation. But yeah, sort of this idea of what makes you acceptable in the Federation eyes. And it's been talked about in many different cultures and species coming in. Like, what is it to be acceptable? Here's the criteria. Do you lose your cultural identity? Do you get to keep it? Like, these are all questions that definitely are relevant in our day and age right now as well.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Yeah, so this was, it's too often that Star Trek does this, unfortunately, but I would agree on most of the points that you just said, Amy. So.
Ian Bartholomew says, I understand a lot of people who have ASD diagnosis identify with Tilly, and I can see why. Some people are like this. It is absolutely a positive to have someone who doesn't quite conform and may not be neurotypical on the crew.
Bravo!
Yes.
Because, like I said earlier, I'm on the autism spectrum myself, so, but yeah, so I immediately clung to Tilly right away. When Discovery started, I immediately clung to Tilly. Because, she was like the person who was like that. And granted, Mary Wiseman said that she didn't do research or anything like that to act that way. But, she is humbled by that fact that people who are on the spectrum have clung to her character. So, and I commented on that thread where he started this, and I said I'm on the ASD spectrum myself. So that was a bravo comment there, Ian. So.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of comments about this. Some people have not taken to Tilly and felt like that her acting was not realistic, and why do they have to have this character in Star Trek? And so I think it definitely brings to that point, and how so many people can relate to her. And I think it's a positive to have her on the crew.
Yes, and I totally agree with you on that. And what I was going off what you said, a lot of people thought that, oh my gosh, is this going to be another Wesley Crusher kind of character? And I have been pleasantly surprised that Tilly is not like that. So I'm actually really happy about that. Christopher Mock says, I had to be the only one here that's just not into Tilly. For a cadet now ensign, She has the brains for sure, but they need to dump that socially awkwardness of her character. Hopefully this is the writer's way of playing the long game with her character development, and it'll all be clear one day why she's jittery, jumpy, and basically a wreck all the time. It's not the espresso, or maybe the computer just needs to cut her off and serve a nice hot tea instead. Okay. Maybe?
Yep. So for some people, Tilly's just not their cup of tea, I guess you would say.
Yeah, just give her a cup of nice tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Yes.
So So going off what we just said, she's socially awkward. I am too. So I would totally agree with that. But I can understand why people don't really like Tilly either. I do understand that. So.
Yeah. Well, Chris Chaplin says, the shift in Poe was silly. She's depicted as a snarling beast and then suddenly loses all of that. I took it as the universe translator, but still, I agree with many of your points. So that was in a thread, but going back to like Poe's shift halfway through, and now she's sort of not who we saw at the beginning, which I think makes sense. I mean, when you're in a strange starship, you're a runaway, you've got to defend yourself. So you're going to be in defense mode until, as Tilly does, warm her up and get to the problem and find a solution.
Yes. I thought that, did anybody notice that she, when she started growling at Tilly, that Tilly just responded with the growling of herself?
I loved that. I loved it. And I was like, that's brave. That's courage, for Tilly to do that.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I think, wow, that's brave of Tilly to do that. I mean, just to try to gain her trust, she would just growl right back to her. And I thought, when I thought that, I immediately thought back to the scene in the season with Laurel and Cornwell on the sarcophagus ship, and Laurel tells Cornwell, "Scream for me."
Yes.
And Jane Brooke and Mary Chieffel have been imitating that at conventions ever since.
Yes, I saw that live at Star Trek Las Vegas. Yes.
So yeah, that's why I thought that was a fantastic way to do that. That was brave of Tilly. Way to go.
Yes.
All right. Alan W. McDonald says, okay, I had time to watch it last night. I am sad to say, while disco is Trek, so I watch as a loyal fan, but I am still meh on the stories it tells. In this case, seeing Tilly berated by her mom was painful, but the way she lied and snuck around with a fugitive was just plain out of character from the little of her character we have seen so far. A royal fugitive is so far above her pay grade that when the truth finally comes out, there would be repercussions and not happy ones. Yeah, I was kind of surprised about that whole last scene with in the transporter room. So.
Yeah. And Alan, you make a great point. Like once Tilly, she found a fugitive. She really should have reported it. It's above her pay grade. She's just an ensign and she's in the command track. So she really needs to be following protocol. And then to find out that she is royalty, that's definitely way above her pay grade and should have. And she found out that she's this fugitive, wanted intergalactically. Like were so many times when Tilly really should have taken it to her superiors and didn't. I understand because of the story, but that's, Alan, a very, very good point. And she should have repercussions and probably not happy ones.
Yeah. And Alan, way to go, sir. I totally agree with you. Yeah, so I was really confused by that transporter scene. Don't you think she would have reported this stuff? But I guess she didn't. And I thought maybe they'll follow up on this in season 2, maybe, or down the road, that something will, will be biting her in the butt, later on.
Yeah. So. Like what was this unauthorized use of the transporter, Yeah. And you're right. She had to be sneaking around because there wasn't anyone else on the ship that saw her. So it had to be, with intent that she was sneaking around Poe and getting her to the transporter and sending her off on her way. So
yeah, and there was one thing that I saw a lot of comments about elsewhere is, where on earth did she send her to? I was assuming her home planet, but I don't know.
Yeah. I would have to assume that as well, because where else would she go?
Yeah, exactly. Was there a ship that we didn't see? But I don't know.
Yeah. Well, those are the comments. And again, listeners, I would remind you there's a whole bunch more on our Facebook group on the Babel Conference. So, Wes, how do you think the fans responded to this week's short trek?
Well, based upon the comments, I would say that the reaction is mixed. There are some people who thought that it wasn't very good. And there are people like me who absolutely loved it. But then there are people in between going like, I love certain parts, X amount of parts here and X amount of parts there. I think the reaction was mixed, Amy.
Yeah, I have to agree. However, I would like to point out the worst comments that I saw was summed up best by listener Tim Robertson, and he said, meh. And, Alan was sort of the same way of meh. So I didn't hear the, ooh, I hate this. This is terrible. And I did get comments like that from season 1 Discovery. So if meh is the worst that this has done, then I'm pretty happy. And I'm going to say that the fans liked it overall.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm glad that no one actually said I flat out hated it.
Yes, we don't have time for haters.
No, we don't. And negativity in general about Discovery.
But critiques and comments are great. So yes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, be sure to check out our Discovery and Short Treks coverage. We have Live from the Edge, and that is with Bruce and Brandy. So you can talk to them live. And then that is released the next day as a podcast. We have back with us our commentary, Tracks from the Edge with Mike and Max. That's already out as well. And of course, you can catch full analysis of the Edge main show, and that will still remain on Fridays with Patrick and myself. And that's where I will reveal more of my thoughts on the Short Trek's Runaway. And to wrap up coverage, we have Notes from the Edge for links between Discovery and the broader franchise with Chris Jones. He's already been messaging me, and he's so excited to put out another Notes from the Edge. So I am very looking forward to this. You will find all of these shows in the main feed for The Edge and in the Trek.fm master feed. We would love to hear your thoughts on Discovery. The best place to do that is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. And I will collect your feedback for Postcards from the Edge. You can also find us on Twitter at TrekFM or send us an email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select The Edge. So Wes, where can people find you on the interwebs to continue this wonderful discussion about Runaway?
Well, I hang out on Facebook. I'm in the Babel Conference. I definitely do comment. I've posted a few things here and there from time to time. But you can also follow my podcast. It's on the Facebook link is facebook.com/MN Star Trek Nerd Pod. And the Twitter handle is at MNST Nerd Pod. I'm very active on my Twitter page for my podcast. I'm very, very active. I know you follow me, Amy.
Yes, I do.
Yep. And, I'm very active in it. So, and I release episodes twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. So,
yeah. And you just recently had Haley on from Standard Orbit.
Yes, I did. And it was about Guilty Pleasure episodes. So check that one out.
Definitely. Well, you can find me here on the network, co-hosting The Edge with Patrick. And I am also co-host on Earl Grey with Richard and Justin. So you can find me there. I am also on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson. And my favorite place is the Babel Conference because that's where it's all about. We would like to thank our associate producers, Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, and Cornelia Reutner. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer, visit patreon.com/trekfm for all the details. Well, thank you, Wes, for coming on Postcards. So much fun to finally meet you, sort of, this new way of meeting people.
This is great. This was great, Amy. I had a lot of fun. So
Yes. Well, join us next month for another episode of Postcards from the Edge. Hailing frequencies open.